Charlie Kirk on his show yesterday speaking about the 14th Amendment, and he's being critical of it. A reminder that the 14th Amendment was passed in the wake of the Civil War. It is one of the efforts at Reconstruction, giving essentially protections to former slaves and allowing them to be at least nominally full citizens under the law. And this is Charlie Kirk's take on the 14th Amendment.
So here's what it says on The Atlantic. The Constitution prohibits Trump from ever being president again. By Michael Luttig and Lawrence Tribe. Now, Lawrence Tribe is a crazy person, but he's actually well respected on the left, which is telling. As students of the United States Constitution for many decades, one of a U.S. Court of Appeals judge, the other as a professor of constitutional law, and both as constitutional advocates, scholars, and practitioners, we long ago came to the conclusion that the 14th Amendment, the amendment ratified in 1868 that represents our nation's second founding, a new birth of freedom, contains within a protection against the dissolution of the republic by a treasonous president. Okay, let's just slow down. The 14th Amendment was necessary for some things, 100%, but it's way too broadly written. It's sloppily written in some ways. The moral premise of the 14th Amendment, excellent. Of course, obviously, no one's going to debate that. No one will. Abolishing slavery and respecting the dignity of all people. But they float the 14th Amendment for everything. For removal of debts. Remember when they said, oh, the debt ceiling can be raised because of the 14th Amendment? Preventing Donald Trump from becoming president, birthright citizenship. The 14th Amendment is the catch-all. The 14th Amendment has become kind of the modern Marxist revolutionary gateway to whatever they want to do. It doesn't always hold up in court, but it's way too broad. It's just too broad. Again, morally necessary with too many opaque provisions and vocabulary that is now harming us in 2023. They believe the 14th Amendment nullifies the rest of the Constitution as long as the government can be used to attack white people or now to attack insurrectionists. That's why language matters.
So, now he says at the end there that the 14th Amendment can be used to attack white people. It's just too broad. Like, look, I'm okay with the slavery thing ending, right? No one's going to argue that except, you know, some of the white supremacist websites like Stormfront and stuff. You might take a little bit of a closer look, scratch beneath the surface. It won't be too much of a scratch to get to that point. It just went too far in certain instances. Because now they're coming after you. And I'm not exactly sure what he's talking about there, because this is apparently in reference, obviously, to the 14th Amendment and the equal protection, not the equal protection clause, but some of the parts of the 14th Amendment protecting the right for votes to be counted, for your vote to be heard, and for it to be counted as a part of elections, which was needed for black people who were newly emancipated and had now, at least on paper, and not in practice in the end, especially when Reconstruction was scrapped, but the right to vote. That is what the 14th Amendment was there to help solidify.
It also banned those who engaged in insurrection, quote, end quote, against the United States from holding any civil, military, or elected office without the approval of 2/3 of the House and Senate. The amendment prohibited former Confederate states from repaying war debts and compensating former slave owners for the emancipation of their enslaved people, finally, which is based. Finally, it granted Congress power to enforce this amendment, a provision that's the good government's power for the national government to have, a provision that led to passage of other landmark legislation in the 20th century, including the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the Voting Rights Act of 1965. So yeah, that's the communism, is that we let black people vote in addition to stopping slavery. Because
and the birthright citizenship element is what he would mention in the 14th Amendment, which is clearly delineated, and they say, you know, it's not valid. But
the attack on with the civil rights stuff, that Charlie and the people who sponsor him and have been sponsoring him straight out of high school They believe that giving black people full civil rights in this country is an attack on white people because it dilutes their voting power.
Yeah, that's what he's saying there. And he's translating the attacks on Donald Trump, the righteous attacks on him for, trying to overturn the democratic results of an election. That's why they're using the 14th Amendment, because it fits into the fake elector scheme, which would just do away with the will of the people. And Jack Smith's tact here is to say that this is a 14th Amendment violation because you're essentially putting a bunch of votes in the trash in favor of fake votes, fake electors that would put you into power. I think it's pretty straightforward, and I don't understand how you could have an objection to it in good faith. But the reality is that Charlie is trying to do what his predecessor, his idol Rush Limbaugh, would do, which would be to take this story and shoehorn it into how can we hate certain groups of people and say, it's fine for them to have their rights. But look, it's gone way too far. The 14th Amendment, it was just too radical. And that is reactionary.
Well, yeah.
When you hear that, it's gone too far. That's definitionally reactionary. And you want to react to a point where we're pre-14th Amendment, we're talking like 1850. That's the reality that Charlie Kirk wants. Charlie Kirk says, we should be living in. The moral premise of the 14th Amendment, that's okay. But it's putting it into practice. That's not okay. Then what does that mean? Not full civil rights for anybody except white guys. That's the Republican project, too. Art Vandelay, the worst world conservative dum-dums like Kirk can imagine is the power of the state currently being leveraged against POC, particularly black people, being turned on them. Imagine a world where upper-class white communities were policed as aggressively as low-income ones. Kirk would be a police abolitionist in a heartbeat.
I mean, the truth is that this was a massive missed opportunity in this country. The Civil War was great, and then Lincoln got shot, and Reconstruction failed because we didn't occupy the South and enforce this stuff for multiple generations until we bleached out the remnants of a sort of white supremacist like plantation society. And instead, like, those people just got to, after a short period, come back into power and help shape the future industrialization of America to the point where, like, they were a major coalition partner with FDR. Right. We should have occupied them. We should have been way more authoritarian as a state government. We didn't. Instead, we came together in as one country again, and we're living in the problem of that ever since.